So hello dear students, welcome to Bajirao IAS Academy, the Hindu news analysis. Today is 20th August 2024 and we are going to discuss few important articles that are given in different newspapers, and we also try to discuss them in a very detailed manner so that this discussion will be helpful for your exam preparation. And yesterday there was a prelims practice question, so that we have seen in the yesterday's session. The question was, arrange these places from south to north. So this is a geography based question, and if you look at this Chagos Island, Reunion Island, Maldives, Lakshadweep, all these islands are located in the Indian Ocean. So the correct answer for this particular question. So first we'll try to look into the map and then we'll try to answer these questions, right? So as I've already told you that Chagos Island, Reunion Island, Maldives, Lakshadweep, everything is part of the Indian Ocean, even though Lakshadweep island of India is considered part of Arabian Sea, right? So this is where Lakshadweep islands are actually located, right? So this is Maldives. This a group of islands south of Lakshadweep are Maldives, and south, so you can see that there are islands and which are known as Reunion Island. This is Mauritius and this is Reunion Island. So this is Reunion Island and it is Mauritius, and after Mauritius you could easily see Chagos Island, and Chagos Island is British Indian Ocean territory. And apart from that, you could also see Seychelles, Comoros. So all these are Indian Ocean islands. So the question is, it is asked to arrange these different islands from south to north. So extreme south, there's a Reunion Island, followed by this Chagos Island, and then Maldives, and then Lakshadweep. So this is the arrangement from the south to north. Now if you can come back to the question, so it is asked first arrange them from south to north. So extreme south, it is a Reunion Island, so therefore we could easily eliminate these two options. And then after Reunion Islands, you could see the Chagos Islands, Maldives, and Lakshadweep. So therefore the correct answer for this question is option B. Option B is the correct answer. And another very important practice question for prelims, and this question when we are discussing about heat waves, so we have discussed this question a lot, and in fact it is in news in recent times because of the heat waves. So try to answer this question in the comment section, and it is also a very important question. So the question is, disasters covered under the State Disaster Response Fund are which of these disasters are considered under the Disaster Response Fund of the state? Hailstorm, cloudburst, pest attack, heat wave. So select the correct answer from the given options. So we'll proceed on to discuss few important relevant articles that were covered in different newspapers. And the first, we are going to start this discussion with an editorial in the Hindu newspaper about protecting Indian capital in Bangladesh. So we all knew what has been happening in Bangladesh. So Sheikh Hasina was former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, and she adopted a pro-India stance, and she also always tried to maintain friendly and close ties with India. However, in recent times, anti-quota protests started, and anti-quota protests in Bangladesh gradually transformed into anti-Sheikh Hasina protest, and she fled the country. She resigned as a Prime Minister of Bangladesh. She fled the country, and then interim government was formed, and in this interim government, so Muhammad Yunus became the head of the interim government. So however, this is the brief background, a brief scenario of what has been happening in Bangladesh. So but after that, India has actually invested a lot of capital in Bangladesh. When we have Sheikh Hasina, pro-Indian leader in Bangladesh, Indian capitalists or Indian investments have significantly enhanced. So however, when the regime was changed, there is a threat of Indian capital. There is a threat for Indian capital from the new government. So this article specifically deals with how could we actually protect Indian capital and Indian investments in Bangladesh. So even after a new regime is going to be formed in Bangladesh. So it is very important. Bangladesh is part of our immediate neighborhood, and a soft underbelly of India. Bangladesh is called as a soft underbelly of India. Now this is the brief context of this article, and let's look into this. So besides this political and diplomatic fallout of Bangladesh crisis for India, because so politically and diplomatically, India and Bangladesh used to maintain a very close and friendly ties when Sheikh Hasina was the Prime Minister of Bangladesh. However, this fallout in Bangladesh or Dhaka is also, in fact, a crisis for India in its neighborhood. And another significant aspect is how this is going to impact Indian companies which are invested and which are operating from Bangladesh. A lot of companies have made investments, they have made significant investments in Bangladesh, and how the capital and the investments in Bangladesh going to be impacted by the change in the regime. However, now, when we talk about Indian companies and their investments in Bangladesh, Indian companies specifically made investments in certain sectors in Bangladesh. So they include edible oil, power, infrastructure, fast-moving consumer goods, automobiles, and pharmaceuticals. So these are the major areas that Indian investors have invested in Bangladesh. So in this context, it is very important for Indian investors to protect these investments in Bangladesh. So despite the political opposition in Bangladesh, the Sheikh Hasina government actually rolled out, we could say that Sheikh Hasina's government in Bangladesh at that point of time rolled out a red carpet for Indian investors. And in fact, the Sheikh Hasina government has also taken a number of positive steps or positive measures to invite Indian investors to invest in Bangladesh. So one of such measure that she had undertook was a designated special economic corridors in Bangladesh were created. So these designated special economic corridors will help improve the investment climate, the business climate in Bangladesh, and specifically to attract Indian investors. So the Sheikh Hasina government at that point of time even created special economic zones also. However, there were allegations that Sheikh Hasina's government has been getting a sustained support from India, and the opposition parties in Bangladesh started India Out campaign. So they decided to ban, or they decided to they don't use Indian products, Indian made goods. So that is India Out campaign. Now this similar campaign that we have already seen in Maldives also, right? So on a similar lines, when Sheikh Hasina was the prime minister, the opposition political parties and different political groups have also launched India Out campaign. But now when these anti-India forces have come to power in Bangladesh, there is a threat that how Indian capital or Indian investments would be protected in Bangladesh. So this is the cause of concern. So however, it can be protected by different ways that the author has suggested, right? So a legal protection for Indian investors. Now when we talk about the legal protection for Indian investors, so there are as of now 3 legal frameworks, and these 3 legal frameworks can be effectively applied or effectively used to protect foreign investment. First, the domestic laws of the country where investments are being made, and in fact, the second was contracts that have been actually signed between the foreign investors and government of the host state, or among the foreign investors and the companies of the host state. So this is the second legal framework. And the third legal framework, a very important legal framework, is international law that actually contains applicable treaties, customs, and general legal principles, right? So these actually attain the status of an international law. So these are 3 basic legal frameworks under which Indian capital can be protected in Bangladesh. So in the context of the regime change in Bangladesh, and Indian capital may also face the threat of government unilaterally changing the rules and existing laws, right? So Indian companies that have already invested in Bangladesh can actually use the first 2 legal frameworks to protect their investment, to protect their capital, their industries from the regulatory risks of the respective countries. However, the problem here is that we'll talk about that problem, but one legislation which actually extend protection to the foreign capital in Bangladesh, so that legislation was Bangladesh Foreign Private Investments Promotion and Protection Act, right? So Indian companies can actually dependent on this act, this legislation, to protect their investments and capital, right? So however, the problem with the domestic laws of host country, so they can easily change those respective laws. So there's no guarantee that those laws would be maintained, and they continues to favor Indian capital, Indian investment, they continue to extend incentives for the Indian investors. There is no such guarantee. So in this context, what India should do? So there is another third method which is more viable and more sustainable at this point of time. So right, so that is with respect to the international law, specifically India Bangladesh bilateral investment treaty. So international law cannot be changed unilaterally, that is for sure, right? So whenever any country has been accepting the international law with respect to the bilateral investment treaty, so no country can actually unilaterally change such laws, like unlike the domestic laws. And in fact, the international laws such as bilateral investment treaties, so which forms part of the international law, that can also be used to hold states accountable for their sovereign actions. So we could actually hold states, for example, if Bangladesh has been adopting discriminatory policies towards Indian investors, then Indian investors can actually hold the Bangladeshi government accountable for their actions. And when it comes to the protection of the foreign investment, the most important instrument with respect to the foreign investment and host country and country of origin with respect to the international law is bilateral investment treaty. And fortunately, we have a bilateral investment treaty with the Bangladesh. Under this bilateral investment treaty, India and Bangladesh have signed this bilateral investment treaty in the year 2009, and Indian investments and Indian capital can be protected under this international law. And in fact, Indian investors' rights can be protected, and in case Bangladesh try to change unilaterally any of these conditions under the bilateral investment treaty, the investors can actually sue or can actually hold Bangladesh or the government accountable for their actions. Now, what is the bilateral investment treaty? So it is also known as BIT. So the bilateral investment treaty between two countries aimed at protecting investments which are being made by investors of both countries, right? So investors of both countries, their investors and investments capital would be protected. And in fact, so whenever any country has been signing bilateral investment treaty, so it amounts to the imposing certain conditions on the regulatory behavior of the host states. So certain restrictions would be imposed, certain conditions would be imposed on the state which has been actually allowing or attracting foreign investment, and that state is known as host states. So thus for in fact, it prevent the undue inference with the foreign investors' rights, or foreign investors' rights and their investments are adequately protected whenever the bilateral investment treaty is being signed between two different countries. And bilateral investment treaty is also forms part of the international law. Thereby, the host country cannot unilaterally change the bilateral investment treaty at the detriment of the investors or the capital, at the detriment of capital of the investors. And in fact, when we talk about the advantages of the bilateral investment treaty, it actually holds a certain benefit, certain advantages, because it empowers the foreign investors to directly sue the host state before the international tribunal. So if they believe that their rules are being changed at the detriment of the investors, and in fact the host country unilaterally changing the norms and violating the rights of the investors, the foreign investors are actually empowered to directly sue the host state before the international tribunal. And in fact, it is very close to holding the host governments accountable for their actions in case of investors' rights are violated. So in case investors believes that the host state, in this case for example Bangladesh, so has breached its treaty obligations. Now as of now, there is no such attempt from the Bangladesh to unilaterally change the treaty obligations under the bilateral investment treaty. But in case in future, so if Bangladesh try to unilaterally change bilateral investment treaty, Indian investors and Indian capital can be adequately protected through the bilateral investment treaty. And in fact, so in case of adverse sovereign regulation by the Bangladeshi government on Indian investments, Indian companies can rely on India-Bangladesh bilateral investment treaty, and this treaty was signed in the year 2009. In fact, we also have bilateral investment treaties with a number of other countries also, but India has terminated the bilateral investment treaty with almost all countries, but fortunately we have one bilateral investment treaty that continues to exist with Bangladesh. And because of that reason, in the context, in the backdrop of regime change in Bangladesh, India could effectively use this bilateral investment treaty to sue the government or hold the government of host country of Bangladesh in case they unilaterally change the treaty obligations, and that is a detriment of the investors and the capital that is invested in Bangladesh. However, the larger question is India's bilateral investment treaties. It is not just with respect to the Bangladesh, or India's investment is not just with respect to Bangladesh. Bangladesh is just an example, or just it is an immediate reference point. However, the issue should not be restricted to India's eastern neighbor, so that is Bangladesh, because we have investments in several other countries, and it is also in India's interest, and it is also in the interest of India's investors, that we need to effectively protect our investments and capital in other countries also. And in fact, in recent times, India's outbound investments have grown manifold. They have increased a lot in recent times, and according to United Nations Convention on Conference on Trade and Development, so this is an international organization which actually looks after the trade and development, so that is United Nations Conference on Trade and Development. So according to this particular organization, the outward FDI from India in the year 2023 is about 13.5 billion, and in fact India is one of the country which is significantly investing in other countries, and in fact India is also the top 20 capital exporting countries in the world. And thus the issue of legal protection for India's investment and India's capital and even India's companies in the abroad assumes a lot of importance, and it requires a lot of salience also, right? So India should therefore evolve an investment treaty practice. So there should be a proper investment treaty practice, and this investment treaty practice will help us protect our investments, our companies abroad, and our investments also achieve salience over a period of time. So we need to keep both the host country and home status in mind whenever we are evolving a comprehensive and a robust investment treaty practice. So this is what the author has been suggesting in this article. And the next article, a very important article, is with respect to the restoration of Banni grasslands. Previously also we have talked about the Banni grasslands. Now when we talk about these Banni grasslands, so Banni grasslands are located in the state of Gujarat, and in fact they are Asia's largest grasslands, one of the largest grasslands in Asia. So however, recently they are in news, and in fact in the Hindu, Banni grasslands were discussed in a very detailed manner, because Banni grasslands have been facing various threats because of the natural as well as anthropogenic factors or man-made factors, and we need to talk about the threats that Banni grasslands in Gujarat have been facing and how we can restore these Banni grasslands. And we will also understand the importance of the Banni grassland, and conservation and protection measures should be undertaken for the restoration and protection of these Banni grasslands. And in fact, as I have already told you, these Banni grasslands in Gujarat have been facing a numerous and number of threats. So they include degradation, deforestation, overgrazing, agriculture, urbanization, and other natural and human-made reasons. So all these are the major reasons for the extinction or degradation of Banni grassland ecosystem. And in fact, according to some data, as much as 49% of the grassland areas worldwide have estimated experiencing degradation. And in fact, the degradation of grasslands will further give an impetus to the desertification, and desertification due to climate change is on rise across the world, and desertification has the potential to transform or turn the agriculture lands into deserts or arid and semi-arid areas, and which are not suitable for the cultivation. And then it would also create the problem of food security, a large-scale food security problem across India. However, the grasslands, when we talk about the grasslands are increasingly threatened, or they have been facing number of threats. Before we have discussed the man-made or anthropogenic threats, and apart from that, the agricultural conversion. The grasslands are being converted into agricultural lands, and when we convert grasslands into agricultural lands, in those those lands we have been using excessive fertilizer and pesticides, thereby polluting the grassland ecosystem on a large scale. This has been taking place, and it is one of the reason for the degradation of grasslands. And unsustainable irrigation practices is another major reason for the degradation of the grasslands. And in fact, the tree-based plantation projects are being taken up in these grasslands, and that ultimately lead to grasslands losing their characteristics and their nature, and invasive species and mega developmental projects. So all these are major reasons they have been emerging as a major threat to the grassland ecosystem. Now we will briefly talk about the grasslands. What are these grasslands? Now, grasslands are one of the largest ecosystems. They are one of the ecosystems on this planet. We have a number of ecosystems, right? So marine ecosystem, terrestrial ecosystem. Within terrestrial ecosystem, there's a grassland ecosystem, desert ecosystem, right? So grasslands are one of the ecosystem on this planet. And in fact, when we talk about these grasslands, the grasslands are specifically located in these areas which are known as arid and semi-arid areas. And if you look at India's map, the arid and semi-arid areas are mostly located in the state of Rajasthan and Gujarat, and Banni grasslands are also located somewhere in this part of the Gujarat, right? So in fact, Africa is very well known for the grasslands, especially the savannas, and even grassy shrublands and open grasslands are the different types of grasslands, and pampas, prairies, savannas. So all these are different types of grasslands that we actually found across the world. Okay, so I hope you have come across the grasslands called steppes and savannas, pampas, prairies. So these are different types of grasslands across different continents that we actually see, right? So grasslands are one of the ecosystems that we regularly see. And in fact, the grasslands also harbor a number of unique and iconic species, and they also offer a variety of material, and even they also provide us intangible advantages to the people. For example, several ecosystems and services such as carbon storage, climate mitigation, pollination. So all these essential services are being provided by the grassland ecosystems. And in India, so around 24% of the total land area is under the grasslands, and in fact the grasslands actually occupy 8 lakh square kilometers of the total area. And Banni grasslands, in fact, so once cover an approximate area of 3,800 square kilometers, but its size of its the total expansion of the grasslands of Banni have reduced to about 2,600 square kilometers, and it is a cause of concern. And you can also go through this. You can pause the video and you can also go through the Banni grasslands if you wanted to know more details about the Banni grasslands. So how can we restore the Banni grasslands? We have understood that the Banni grasslands have been facing a lot of threats, especially the man-made or anthropogenic threats, right? So overgrazing is a threat, agriculture conversion is a threat, and apart from that, it has been facing a lot of threats, encroachment, all these threats. So how can we actually restore these Banni grasslands is a cause of concern. So in order to restore them, it will be divided into 5 different categories, and in the first 2 categories are known as highly suitable and suitable zones, right? So for the convenience of restoration of these grasslands, they are being classified, they are being categorized into 5 different categories. The first category is highly suitable and suitable zones. And in fact, Banni grasslands, within the Banni grasslands, highly suitable and suitable zones actually account for nearly 2/3 of the total Banni grasslands, or 2/3 of the complete Banni grasslands. And in fact, the highly suitable and suitable Banni grasslands can be easily restored by simply providing them with the adequate sources of water, either through irrigation or rainwater harvesting. So if we can undertake simple measures, because they occupy just more than 2/3 of the total grassland ecosystem, and if we just provide irrigation and rainwater harvesting to the highly suitable and suitable zones within the Banni grasslands, we could easily restore them. And in fact, grassland expansion and restoration should also not much difficult in the third area, which is known as moderately suitable zone. We have also a third area which is a moderately suitable zone, and in this zone also grassland expansion should not be a much difficult. And fourth is marginally suitable and not suitable zones. So these are 4th and 5th zones of bunny grasslands for the purpose of for the purpose of restoration, and they can also be managed through the interventions such as terracing is one intervention. Supplementary inputs can be given such as fertilizers, and even protecting these marginally suitable, not suitable grasslands from high water runoff, erosion and salt intrusion. So if we take concerted measures for the protection of bunny grasslands in the marginally suitable, not suitable areas, we could also easily restore them. And we should also take care of the availability of 3 important nutrients such as nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and 4 essential micronutrients: iron, manganese, zinc and copper. So all these essential nutrients should be regularly given to the bunny grasslands for their easy restoration, so that the health of the bunny grasslands can be easily restored. So however, there are certain recommendations for the sustainable grassland management. When we talk about sustainable grassland management, specifically the bunny grassland management, so there are certain practices that have to be undertaken. So they include biodiversity conservation and enhancement of the livelihoods for the local communities, because one thing that we must understand is that grasslands as an ecosystem provide a lot of livelihood opportunities for the local communities which are living in that particular area. And in fact, grasslands also host a wide number of species, and in this context it is very important that we need to manage these grasslands in a more and more sustainable manner because of their ecological benefits. And in fact, there should be a proper action plans to conserve these grasslands, especially the bunny grasslands, and there should be a proper action plans, and that should be put in place, so which actually have a vital role to play, particularly in the context of climate change, because they are a great source of sequestration of the carbon dioxide. They help in sequestration of the carbon dioxide. So because of that reason, we need to put in place the a proper action plans. Carbon dioxide has been increasing, and plants can actually absorb the carbon dioxide and sequester the carbon dioxide and reduce the amount of the carbon in the atmosphere, and that would further reduces the greenhouse gases and global warming and even climate change also. So we need to understand the ecological importance of the grassland, and we must conserve the grasslands as well. And in fact, there are number of bird species which are very, very important bird species which are dependent on the grassland. For example, great Indian bustard, the Bengal florican, all these bird species actually breed on grasslands. And in fact, the grassland habitat has been shrinking, and degradation of the grassland habitat has also been impacting the great Indian bustard and Bengal florican species. And across India, we do not have enough great Indian bustard species, and it is also a cause of concern because great Indian bustard, as per the IUCN red list of species, it is categorized as critically endangered species with the threat of extinction in the very near future. And for the protection of biodiversity, ecosystem conservation and maintenance of ecosystem functions, it is very important that we must immediately restore the bunny grasslands as early as possible. And the next important article is a Clean Ganga mission. So we will understand what exactly is this Clean Ganga mission and what are the objectives of this Clean Ganga mission, because it is one of the very important and very ambitious program specifically to rejuvenate river Ganga, right? So river Ganga has been facing a number of threats. We all knew that what are the threats that river Ganga has been facing in recent times. So right, for example, pollution of river water is one of the major threat. So most of Indian rivers are polluted. Now pollution is a major threat, and river Ganga has been impacted by the river water pollution, and therefore in order to revive and rejuvenate river Ganga and prevent pollution and set up sewage treatment plants and also impose certain restrictions on industries which actually recycle the which actually releases water into river Ganga without recycling, the Clean Ganga mission is started. So we will try to understand the context first, and then we'll discuss the major provisions of the Clean Ganga mission. Right, so the context is that the National Mission for Clean Ganga, it is also known as NMCG, the Centre's Marquee project for the purpose of cleaning river Ganga and its tributaries in recent meeting, and in fact the government has also expressed concerns over the tardiness of river cleaning projects being executed in various states under the mission. And in fact, whatever the projects that are undertaken as part of the Clean Ganga mission, so they are not giving sustainable results. And in fact, the delays in the river Ganga or delays in the implementation of several projects as part of National Mission for Clean Ganga is a cause of concern, and therefore there is a need for the faster implementation of all these projects in cooperation with all the states through which river Ganga has been passing through. And we will specifically talk about what exactly is this National Mission for Clean Ganga. So it acted as implementation arm of the National Ganga River Basin Authority. So there is a National Ganga River Basin Authority, and National Mission for Clean Ganga is an implementation arm of the National Ganga River Basin Authority, which was constituted under a legislation called Environmental Protection Act. Now, one thing that you need to understand, that National Ganga River Basin Authority is created under the Environment Protection Act. So we will also look into the objective. What is the objective of National Mission for Clean Ganga? So the objective is to reduce pollution and also ensure the rejuvenation of river Ganga. So this is the primary and basic objective of river Ganga. However, National Mission for Clean Ganga is not free from the challenges. It has been facing number of challenges. For example, so there are number of ghats across the river, river Ganga, and rubbish heaps are found near ghats and numerous towns along the river. So therefore, it has been indicating that there is an improper and inappropriate waste disposal practices which are being practiced by the people in those areas, and this actually poses a threat to the cleanliness efforts of river Ganga. And in fact, sewage treatment plants are not properly set up across all the cities through which the river Ganga has been flowing through, and in fact industries are not recycling the water that they are releasing into the rivers. So these are the major causes of pollution of river Ganga, and that has been impacting the water quality and the ecosystem within the river Ganga. So river Ganga has a lot of cultural, spiritual importance for Indians, and therefore it is very important that we must ensure that river Ganga is pollution free. And National Mission for Clean Ganga will help make river Ganga pollution free, right? So pollution free Ganga. And in fact, there are a lot of state governments which need to work in coordination with the central government for the purpose of Clean Ganga, and state governments are under the impression that building treatment plants was entirely the center's responsibility, and because of that reason their attempts of building sewage treatment plants, recycling, imposing restrictions on industries for the recycling of the water, the wastewater that they release into the rivers. So these measures are not properly undertaken by the state governments, and in fact the major responsibility lies on the center, that is the view and the opinion of the state governments across the states through which river Ganga has been passing through. And in fact, the waste management, municipal solid waste management, segregation, recycling, and most effective when handled at source. But the problem is that there is also poor municipal solid waste management practices, and they are also one of the contributor of pollution in river Ganga. And there are a lot of towns and cities which are located along the river Ganga. However, there is no proper water treatment or no proper water treatment from the industries, and even there is also no proper waste treatment infrastructure that is in place. And one of the reason is lack of capacity or poor financial condition of the municipal bodies in the towns which are located across the river Ganga. And in fact, much of India's urban population resides outside the sewerage networks. They are not connected with the sewerage networks. That has been resulting in substantial portion of waste not reaching to the sewage treatment plants. And it is very important that all the waste that is being generated, or liquid waste which is being generated in these urban areas, so they should not be directly merged with the water or contaminated with the water. Rather, so the liquid waste water should be treated in the sewage water treatment plants, in these towns lie across the river Ganga. However, so what are the effects of the national mission for clean Ganga? And in fact, the river's water quality is now within the prescribed limits as per the Central Pollution Control Board. In fact, a primary bathing water quality, so that is the water quality level of river Ganga. And in fact, there is also a conspicuous sign of further improvement in the water quality along the river Ganga. And in fact, there is also a significant rise in the dolphin population, and it is one aspect that which indicating that whatever measures that have been undertaken for the cleaning of river Ganga, because dolphin population are very sensitive to pollution, and in case there is an extreme levels of pollution, it will lead to the large scale extinction or death of these dolphin population. But in recent times, the dolphin population, Ganga river water dolphins, their population has been increasing. Both adult and juvenile population has increased from 2000 to 4000. So in fact, it is doubled, and therefore it is significant improvement with respect to the river Ganga water quality improvement. However, the National Mission for Clean Ganga is now working to develop the water quality index, and this water quality index will help us assess the water quality of river Ganga regularly. And apart from that, it is also very important that we need to significantly improve the capacities of urban local bodies which are located across the towns through which river Ganga has been flowing, so that they could set up the urban sewage treatment plants. And before releasing the water into the rivers, so first water would be treated and recycled, and then only the water should be released. And there should be proper regulations and standards to be implemented in these ghats, so that this waste should not be indiscriminately released into these waters. And industries or industrial wastewater should also be properly regulated, and all these measures have to be properly implemented to improve the river quality of river Ganga and protect our culture, our heritage, and also achieve the objectives as part of the Namami Gange program. And the next important article is with respect to India's nuclear doctrine and its overall importance and relevance. So we will try to understand what is India's nuclear doctrine and its overall relevance. So within 15 months of its nuclear test, so that was Pokhran 2, a nuclear test was conducted by India. This is second nuclear test that was conducted in the year 1999. So India has immediately released its nuclear doctrine. So nuclear doctrine is a doctrine of every country which has a basic details about the use of nuclear weapon against an enemy state. In August 17, 1999, K. Subramaniam, he was the convener of the first National Security Advisory Board. And this first National Security Advisory Board is actually the subsidiary body of the National Security Council, presented this draft document of nuclear doctrine to the Brajesh Mishra. He was the first National Security Advisor, country's first National Security Advisor, Brajesh Mishra. So that is India's nuclear doctrine. And in fact, this draft nuclear doctrine document was made public so that the doctrine would as then Prime Minister Vajpayee stressed, that be properly studied before it attains the finality, right? So a proper study of this document and accepting suggestions, accepting feedback from the people, so that first we need to have a comprehensive doctrine, a comprehensive nuclear doctrine. And so in order to attain the finality of such a doctrine, so it should be properly studied by different stakeholders. And in fact, the draft doctrine did not receive the official stamp as of now. But when we talk about India's nuclear doctrine, so India follows a nuclear doctrine called no first use nuclear doctrine. So right, so we follow no first use nuclear doctrine. Under the no first use nuclear doctrine, so we use nuclear weapons only for the purpose of credible minimum deterrence. So for the purpose of credible minimum deterrence, that we use nuclear weapons. And even though we have nuclear weapons, we never use nuclear weapons in the first instance in case of a conflict between India and any other country. Rather, so we use nuclear weapons as a credible minimum deterrence, and in case any country, any adverse country attacks India with the nuclear weapons, then we use nuclear weapons against that state, and India's response would be massive retaliation. Massive retaliation would be the response of the Indian nuclear doctrine. So this is what the nuclear doctrine has specifically mentioned. Now, why India developed nuclear weapons? Now, when India developed nuclear weapons, its primary focus is not Pakistan, but its primary focus is China. Remember that Pakistan don't have nuclear weapons when India developed and acquired nuclear weapons. So therefore, India's primary focus is China, and in fact it is one of India's strategic success that China is already a nuclear weapon state, but India acquired nuclear weapons because of Chinese threat we actually have. And in fact, another significant aspect is India already developed Agni 5 missile, and which would cover entire China, and Agni 5 missile is also a nuclear capable missile with the highest accuracy. Now we'll coming to the discussion. So another principles which are being mentioned in it, so they actually reproduced in a press note that the government will release after the doctrine was operationalized in 2003. So this doctrine of India's nuclear doctrine was operationalized in the year 2003, and in fact the draft nuclear doctrine presented India's conceptualization of its role as a nuclear weapon state, and in fact after Pokhran 2 test, India became a nuclear weapon state, and this draft nuclear doctrine has conceptualized India's role as a nuclear weapon state, and in fact an unambiguously declared political role of nuclear weapons. And this nuclear doctrine has also directed for building credible minimum deterrence at the minimum level for the retaliation policy. So that is massive retaliation, and we use nuclear weapons for the purpose of credible minimum deterrence. So deterrence, we would deter other countries to attack India, we would deter other countries against using nuclear weapons on India or against India. So however, these principles of nuclear doctrine were conceived 25 years ago, but the major question is these principles are still relevant. This is the major question, because closer to home, Pakistan routinely resorts to the shrill projections of full spectrum of deterrence first use. Understand one thing, that Pakistan has no policy called no first use policy. Pakistan even ready to use nuclear weapons in the first instance, and Pakistan also developing the tactical nuclear weapons. So therefore, it is a cause of concern for India that Pakistan has been very often threatening India to use tactical nuclear weapons against India. And the other important dimension is that China is also appears to be undertaking an unprecedented expansion in the recent times, because this expansion and aggression that we have already seen at India's borders and even the Indian Ocean region. And when we talk about the nuclear capabilities of China, China also has a massive amount of nuclear capabilities, and it has also been expanding its nuclear capabilities over a period of time. And in fact, China has recently acquired the hypersonic missiles, and that would provide a strategic edge for China when it comes to the combat with any other country, including India. So however, because of the adversaries and China has been increasing its capabilities, the nuclear capabilities, do these changes really necessitates the revision of the guidelines which are actually adopted a quarter century ago in this nuclear doctrine? So India's nuclear doctrine is no first use nuclear doctrine. We will never use nuclear weapons in the first instance, rather, so we would just use nuclear weapons as a credible minimum deterrence. However, if any country attacks India, so we would attack that particular country with massive retaliation. However, Pakistan has been using cross-border terrorism and Chinese aggressive behavior in the Indian Ocean and border areas. So they are certainly two topmost security threats that India has been facing as of now. However, there's also an additional fear that these two countries may come together against India. So that is the threat of two-front war. That is the threat of two-front war, that both Pakistan and China can come together they stand together against India. So can India's arsenal deter two nuclear armed adversaries with substantive aggression is the question that the Indian policymakers have to think about with respect to India's nuclear capabilities. However, in recent times, India has actually abjured from a large scale accumulation of nuclear warheads or the need to match those adversary. In fact, the draft nuclear doctrine that was published 25 years back does not actually mandate a nuclear force. So this nuclear force would be much more effective, enduring, diverse and flexible and responsive. So this draft nuclear doctrine has not much emphasized on the numbers, and it has also not emphasized for the creation of a nuclear force that would be effective, enduring, diverse, flexible and responsive. So therefore, the numbers are dynamic entity and they regularly change, and in fact they change as per the strategic environment that is existing. However, India's arsenal is growing at a measured pace every year, and there is also no need for the panic, because nuclear deterrence is not at all about the number game. And you could also go through the number of countries which actually possess these nuclear weapons. And the adversaries technologies in recent times have been increasing manifold. For example, specifically highly accurate conventional delivery systems are being developed, and even they have the ability to mount cyber attacks on the adversary countries, particularly China. And these countries can also use artificial intelligence to neutralize the retaliatory capability, and they also have the improved intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance capability. So they could actually make India's nuclear forces more and more vulnerable. So therefore, India should actually look into these aspects. And when the adversary countries have been increasingly developing, increasing the capacities and the capabilities, so this actually necessitates changes in numbers and command and control structures within the Indian nuclear doctrine or Indian nuclear force also. So however, these do not require the change in the nuclear doctrine. So the nuclear doctrine that we have as of now adopted is the no first use nuclear doctrine with credible minimum deterrence. However, the second doctrinal attribute is no first use, and in fact it is often instinctively dubbed as reactive strategy. No first use policy is very often dubbed as a reactive strategy, because if you look at China and Pakistan, which are potential threats for India, so their disruptive behavior is considered by some as being encouraged by India's lack of hard-nosed hawkish first use strategy. So in case if India uses the first use strategy or if India have the first use strategy with respect to the nuclear weapons, that would potentially deter China and Pakistan, and that would also help mold their behavior, mold their attitude. However, according to the author, this argument does not actually stand the scrutiny, because the first use strategy needs to be supported with the credibility or credible striking capability, so that would obviate or significantly minimize the retaliation capabilities. Okay, so anyway, so India's nuclear doctrine, as per the author, so is well grounded, or in fact it is a well laid out document. So therefore, India should continue with this nuclear doctrine, and it is still relevant in the contemporary times, because no first use nuclear doctrine means that so India is not an irresponsible nuclear state. India always committed for the peace and peace and prosperity of the people and region. So therefore, no first use nuclear policy will make India a responsible nuclear power in the eyes of the international community, and that will also further help in strengthening India's membership to the United Nations Security Council. So that's all in this lecture, and thank you so much.